All right, so let's get into it. We all think we know the Christmas story, right? You've got the wise men, the star, the baby in the manger. It's all very peaceful. But if you actually go back to the original account in the Gospel of Matthew, it's a lot darker. This is basically a political thriller. We're talking espionage, a power struggle, a clash of kings, and it all kicks off on that very first Christmas.
And yeah, that quote just nails it. This is exactly where Christmas gets complicated. We're going to move way past the little felt board nativity scenes you see in church and get into the raw, actually dangerous reality of what was going on. This wasn't just a sweet story. It was a political and spiritual earthquake.
See, what Matthew's describing here isn't just a birth. It's a collision, a cosmic collision, really. You've got the powers of this world, represented by this totally ruthless king, smashing right up against the arrival of a completely different kind of kingdom, a whole new definition of power. Okay, so the scene opens in a way that feels pretty familiar, right? These mysterious visitors show up from the east. They've seen a new star, this incredible sign in the sky that a new king has been born. They've traveled a really long way to find him and, pay their respects. But, and this is key, their first stop isn't some little stable. Nope, they go straight to the palace.
And let's just clear up a huge misconception right away. The Greek word Matthew uses is magoi. Now, these weren't three kings wearing crowns like in the songs. Not at all. A better way to think of them is as Persian or Babylonian priest astronomers. I mean, these guys were the intellectual and political elite of their time. They were the kingmakers, the ones who advised emperors. So when they show up, it's a massive political event.
And that arrival, well, it sets the stage perfectly for the main conflict of this whole chapter, because this story isn't really just about a baby. It's a tale of two kings, two thrones, and two totally, completely opposite ideas of what it means to rule. So, in one corner, you have the guy on the throne, King Herod the Great. Now, on the one hand, he was a brilliant builder, but on the other, he was an absolutely terrifying, paranoid tyrant. I mean, this is a guy who had his own wife and three of his sons executed just because he thought they might be plotting against him. It was so bad that even the Roman Emperor Augustus joked it was safer to be Herod's pig than his son. And that's the man in charge when this new king is born. So can you imagine these foreign dignitaries, these kingmakers, they show up in Herod's capital city and they ask, where is the one born king of the Jews? Now you got to pay attention to the grammar there. They're not asking about some future heir. They're asking about someone who by birthright is already the king. For a guy like Herod who wasn't born into it, that's not just an insult, it's treason.
And Matthew just lays out this stark contrast between the two. You have Herod's reign of terror versus Jesus' reign of heaven. Herod's power is all about destroying anyone who gets in his way. Jesus' power inspires people to worship. The response to Herod is just fear and paranoia. The response to Jesus? Overwhelming joy. Herod's methods are deception and murder. Jesus' kingdom is protected by dreams and guidance from God. It is a complete and total reversal of what power looks like. So Herod, you can bet, is deeply disturbed by all this. He immediately snaps into political survival mode, and he's going to use every single tool he has, even religious scripture, to find and, eliminate this threat to his throne.
You can really see how cunning Herod is in his little three-step plan. First, he calls in his own religious experts, who, sure enough, point to Bethlehem based on a prophecy from Micah. Step 2, he secretly meets with the Magi to interrogate them, trying to nail down the exact timeline. When did this star first show up? And finally, step 3, the big deception. He sends them off to Bethlehem, pretending he wants to worship the new king too. He tells them, report back to me so I can go and worship him too.
Yeah, right.
And to show this wasn't just some random series of events, Matthew structures his whole story around Old Testament prophecy. It's like he's laying out a blueprint. He connects every major event to a specific text. For example, he uses that Micah prophecy to show that the religious leaders in Jerusalem knew exactly where the king would be born, which makes their silence pretty damning. The family's escape to Egypt? He links that to Hosea, framing Jesus as the true son, who is reliving Israel's own story. Even the horrific massacre is tied to Jeremiah, echoing this ancient grief. For Matthew, none of this is a coincidence. It's proof that God's plan is unfolding exactly as it was meant to. So after the Magi find Jesus and worship him, they're warned in a dream not to go back to Herod. They defy him and just go home a different way. And that single act of defiance, well, it triggers Herod's fury and turns the Holy Family into political refugees.
And just like the Magi, Joseph gets his own warning in a dream. An angel basically says, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and get to Egypt. Herod is about to start searching for the child to kill him." So, under the cover of darkness, they run for their lives. It's this powerful echo of the Moses story, right? Another child escaping a king's order to kill infants. So when Herod figures out that the Magi have played him, that they've completely outwitted him, his paranoia and his rage just boil over. He's been mocked, outmaneuvered by these foreigners, and his response is just what you'd expect: brutal, indiscriminate violence. Now, we've all seen these dramatic paintings of the massacre with hundreds of deaths, but we have to remember, Bethlehem was a tiny village, maybe 300 people in total. Historians figure the number of baby boys under the age of 2 would have been somewhere between 6 and 20. The horror here isn't about the scale. It's about the cold, calculated cruelty. It's a portrait of a king so deeply insecure that he would murder a handful of innocent children just to protect his own power. Eventually, Herod dies, and an angel tells Joseph it's safe to go back. But the threat isn't totally gone. Herod's son, Archelaus, who is known to be just as brutal as his dad, is now ruling over Judea. So, once again, warned in a dream, the family changes course and heads north, up to Galilee. And where they end up, their final destination, is maybe the most telling part of this entire story, because it reveals the true nature of this new, completely upside-down kingdom that Jesus has come to bring. They don't go to the capital, Jerusalem, the center of power and religion. No, they settle in a town called Nazareth, a place so small, so completely insignificant that it's not mentioned even once in the entire Old Testament or in any other major historical records of the time. It was a total backwater, the kind of place that would later lead people to ask, can anything good even come from Nazareth? And this quote just perfectly sums up the whole point Matthew is making. God's kingdom doesn't arrive with trumpets and parades and political takeovers. It arrives in the quiet, in the vulnerable, as a refugee family running for their lives in the middle of the night, with nothing but what they can carry, and a baby who threatens entire empires just by being alive. So the real takeaway from this chapter is a total redefinition of power. Matthew gives us 2 models for what a king can be. There's Herod's way, power that commands, deceives, and destroys. And then there's Jesus' way, a kingship you find in a stable, not a palace. It's about service, not domination. And its power is shown not by taking life, but by the willingness to become completely vulnerable. And that really leaves us with something challenging to think about. This ancient story pushes us to ask a really modern question. What if we've been looking for power and security in all the wrong places? What if true world-changing power isn't found in a palace, but in a refugee family fleeing for their lives in the dead of night?